Diplomacy. It's going to be a very important post-war how all of this plays out. In the meantime, of course, President George W. Bush keeping his usual early hours and probably staying up a little later than normal as he has been getting the regular briefings on the progress of the military action. Jessica Yellen is in our Washington, D.C. bureau with the latest on all of that. Jessica, good morning.
Good morning, Chris. You're right. If today is anything like yesterday, the president is probably up right about now. He started his day yesterday with a briefing around 6 a.m. from his National Security Advisor, Condoleezza Rice, and was in the Oval Office around 7 a.m. He had briefings from Donald Rumsfeld, met with his War Council, and spent a good deal of the day on the phone speaking to world leaders and trying to shore up support, sustain support in the so-called coalition of the willing. Suspects today will have much of the same in it ahead for him. No public event scheduled for the president today, although it is reasonable to expect that he may come before the cameras to make some sort of comment about the loss of life overseas already. Those 16 service people that you mentioned earlier died in that helicopter crash. Perhaps he might make a statement of condolence to their families. And then he's heading off to Camp David. He's going to spend some time there, probably trying to show folks that he's going about business as usual. Chris?
Jessica Yellen in our Washington, D.C. bureau, who is covering the developments out of the White House for us, and the president obviously being kept apprised of all the latest information. Jessica, thank you very much. We appreciate it. We have a lot coming up in our next hour following all the breaking developments, including the latest on the helicopter crash and the U.S. investigation into that videotape. Was it Saddam or wasn't it? Were his sons in that bunker? We're keeping you posted. Dramatic pictures out of Iraq, the first visible signs that the Iraqi military just might not fight for Saddam. Good morning, I'm Chris Jansing. It is 5 a.m. here on the East Coast, 2 a.m. out west, and we continue our live, uninterrupted coverage of the war in Iraq. And right now, let's get you caught up on the headlines. Reuters News Service reporting that U.S. Marines have raised the American Stars and Stripes over the new port of Qasr. Forces had to call in British artillery support to break Iraqi resistance that pinned them down on the Kuwaiti border for 2 hours. Shortly after, the Marines made swift progress to the new port. The old port of Qasr, about 1 mile from there, has not yet been taken. The U.S. Navy says 3 of its ships fired Tomahawk cruise missiles at targets in Iraq overnight. Officials have not released the number of missiles fired or the targets hit. And U.S. military rescue and investigations teams now on the scene of the downed CH-46 helicopter. The Marine helicopter was carrying 4 Americans and 8 Brits. There are no survivors. Officials say hostile fire was not involved in that crash. For the very latest at the Pentagon on the crash and other late-breaking news in terms of troop movements, we turn to MSNBC's Carl Rochelle. And at this early hour, Carl, are we getting any indications of what might have happened with that helicopter?
The indication with what might have happened was that it was an accident, Chris, that it was not hostile fire involved. It possibly was weather-related. It could have been mechanical. It could have been pilot error. It was about 3:30 in the morning local time over there, which means it was dark. The pilot probably using his night vision equipment. But it is a harsh environment. The wind blows, the sand blows. It's hard to see. And the sand does damage to the helicopters, to the rotors, to the equipment on the aircraft. So it is possible that it was a mechanical failure of some sort. It is possible that it was a pilot error, but one thing is clear, it is not enemy fire. And I would tell you now, Chris, that one thing we do know for sure is that everybody is together on the casualty figures. The initial reports had 16 people dying in that crash. 4 U.S. Marines who were confirmed in the beginning to have died in the crash by U.S. military officials. But the number of British soldiers involved there was a disparity in figures. We were initially told that 12 British soldiers were on board, later told 8 by the British, and now the U.S. agrees with the British figures, and the casualty toll out of that is 12. So that's where we are on the crash.
Let's talk about the defectors. There had been an extensive dropping of psych ops, 17 million leaflets that had encouraged over the last weeks, even months, that Iraqi military should consider surrendering, not fighting for Saddam. What are you hearing there about exactly what's going on in that regard?
Well, Chris, you know that the U.S. military forces, including General Barry McCaffrey, one of our consultants who was a commander in Desert Storm 12 years ago, said they worked then, and apparently they are working to some extent now. The leaflets were dropped, as you noted, 17 million plus into that area, telling them, put your hands on top of your head, lay your weapons down, raise white flags. You will not be harmed if you surrender. I would point out to you, though, that what you are seeing now is the outer perimeter of the Iraqi forces. These are the conscripts, the regular army folks, not the Republican Guard, and many of them surrendered during Desert Storm 12 years ago. Many of them expected to surrender now. They are doing exactly that. The fighting may get tougher when they move in closer to Baghdad and engage some of the Republican Guards. They are moving, we understand, in that direction now. One of the first targets was Basra with its oil fields, and they were trying to move in that direction. But I will tell you, there is one interesting aspect I have noted, and that is that the reporting that we are getting from people in the field, like our David Bloom and Fred Francis, all of whom are out amongst what is going on, is ahead of the official word we can get here at the Pentagon or at the command center at Doha in Qatar. And I asked about that and was told, well, you know, that's as we expected it to happen. That's one of the reasons that these people were embedded out there, so you could get the information back into the viewers in our audience and get it ahead of what the official word sometimes takes time to get out. But looks like at this point that, Chris, that the operation is going very well.
Yeah, give us an overall assessment, because obviously there was a little bit of a subdued mood when we were able to talk to a British military spokesman at Doha, Qatar, and they obviously still dealing with the news of that helicopter crash and the loss of life there, and didn't want to put too positive a face on the overall assessment of how it's been going as we enter day 3. But what's the assessment there at the Pentagon?
Well, Chris, I think you could look at the casualty figures. The only known coalition casualties are those 12 people who died in the helicopter crash. There may be more. If there are, we don't know about it. There have been some firefights, brief ones. You mentioned one on Qasr in that port area. But apparently the coalition forces did put down the opposition. We have had no reports of casualties beyond that. The crash of the helicopter, which was an accident not brought down by enemy fire. And if you measure the success in being able to take ground and not take casualties, then you got to believe, at least in that extent, it's a success at this point.
Kara Washel at the Pentagon, thank you very much. We want to take you now to the Iraqi Information Ministry. There we see it. They're about to come to the microphones. They're holding a news conference, give their latest assessment of what's going on. Let's listen in.
His Excellency, the President of Interior, will talk exactly about these things. Those are only the pictures that we are trying to get them in the hospitals. About 37 injured yesterday. Those, some of them. And the master of the gang, international gang, Mr. George Bush, and his failure generals, they are saying that they targeted the government buildings. And we know those people, they feel no shame. We know they are gangs. But actually, I think that the world does not know they are low-life kind of gangs. These are models and examples. I wish, and I still wish, to go to the hospitals. Go to the hospital and ask people. Ask them freely. Let them answer you back. What are the places that has been bombarded and others, and why? If these are military targets, these are the models you will see. Those criminals think that by killing civilians they will terrify us. They cannot terrify Iraqis. All Iraqis, 26 million Saddam Hussein. All the Iraqis are the family of Saddam Hussein. Yesterday,
let me talk in English. Yesterday also
أمس قاموا أيضا باستهداف مقر إقامة أسرة الرئيس.
They had targeted the house of the family of Saddam Hussein. They has targeted.
ولكن بحماية
May God
الله
protect them.
نجوا من هذه الهجمات.
They came out of this attacks
منزل أسرته
safely. Thank
لكنهم
God.
بأمان الآن.
They are safe now.
هذا
This is
أيضا
once more.
المستوى وهذه هي السمعة
This is the level of the American.
لهذه العصابة وهذا هو المستوى
This is the level of the gangs.
هؤلاء الأشرار.
This is the standard that they have, those evils.
هذا مشين حقا.
Do you think this is a superpower?
مشين فعلا.
Really, it's a shame.
إنهم
They are
قوة
superpower
عظمى
of
من
village.
الأشرار. هذا حقيقتهم إنهم كعصابة آل كابوني.
They are like Al Capone's gangs.
الإجراءات
Al Capone.
الرسمية الأمريكية إنه فعلا مثالا على
This is
أعمال الرسمية الأمريكية.
This is a proper example for the American work.
هذا هو الشرير في البيت الأبيض وهذا هو مستوى
This is the
هجماته
evil in the White
في
House.
العراق.
And this is its acts in Iraq.
في إعطائه الفرصة وإعطاء الفرصة لغيره من
We did
الأشرار
not give him a chance or the other evils to continue
القبض وإمساك
to
مرتزقته والأشرار
capture
الذين يعملوا معه.
his gang.
وهو سيواجه المأساة ستكون نصيبه.
He will face the disaster. For the Arabic media, we have declared that they has aimed these gang and these bad people has aimed and targeted the housing of Mr. Saddam Hussein family. And they are trying to give an impression that they are doing a great work as they announce. They are talking about assassinating and killing, that they want to put Iraq in a bad position. We will never let them out of the swamp that they are in, and we entered them in, and we won't let them out. They will see their end because of the aggression they did on Iraq. The second point, yesterday, because they are bad, evil gangs, they declared that they took some of the Iraqi territories and money. Well, I'm not shocked. How can I'm expecting this from a gang. I think the entire world is convinced, although most of them are convinced before, long time ago, as this country is the country who violating the law, and they are trying to put these bad habits on other people. They're trying to accuse other people. All these indications gives the impression that U.S. timber start to fail, for the point that taking the money and the territories, or the money or the documents in any place in the world that they are saying in the United States, if it's all the money, because we were used to use the dollars, the Iraqi officials answer a proper answer for that. But I will say to you that Iraq for sure has the right, has the legal right to take all the acts for this matter, and you will see, and those gang will see, that this step will come back to them with a lot of harms. The second point, which I would like to confirm, they are saying that their forces has entered yesterday night. I don't want to talk about this issue too much because the Minister of Interior will say that. We'll discuss that. But I would like to discuss the issue that I have discussed before, and I want to repeat it again because it's very important. We have a big question. How can we deal with those they are not troops.
هؤلاء مرتزقة.
They are gangs.
هؤلاء لا ينطبق عليهم القانون الدولي.
They are violating the international law.
ماذا سنعمل بهم؟
How can we deal with them? It's mostly they will be dealt with as gang
وكمجرمي حرب.
and as a war criminals.
هو إن شاء الله الدراسة يعني
And the questions
تبين واضحة بي هل
which will be studied
محاكم
exactly,
مجرمي حرب عراقية
would they be judged
محاكم
in
مجرمي حرب
Iraqi
احنا نشوف شلون كيف هذا الموضوع موضوع دراسة
courthouses or other courthouses somewhere? We're gonna study to find out where.
عليهم القانون
But for sure, those people are violating all the international laws.
المستشار القانوني في
Yesterday,
الأمريكية
the American Council
عدوانهم على العراق ينسحب عليه القانون الدولي هذا غلط.
was trying to show that the aggression on Iraq was according to international law. Let him trick himself by himself. This is illusion.
هؤلاء لا ينطبق عليهم القانون الدولي.
Those are not following the international laws,
الدراسة اللي راح تبين كيف
and
هؤلاء
the study
سيعاملون.
will show how those people will be dealt with
يا نوع من القوانين
because they are
تنطبق عليهم.
criminal killer gangs.
هؤلاء
Some of the law
عبارة
will
عن مرتزقة ومجرمي
apply
حرب.
to them, or
أي
some,
نوع من
or those people are
قواعد
gangs
الجناية
who
الدولي
some
راح نطبق على أعناقهم
criminal law will be applicable to them
بعد إن شاء
on
الله
their
هذا الموضوع
ugly faces.
راح يتوضح بشكل
After this matter, all this issue will be
قبل
cleared.
أن أدعو زميلي
Before I invite my friend,
كي يوجزكم
the Minister of Interior, to talk about these issues,
أنه وزعوا
it come to my vision that
هؤلاء الأوغاد
those gangs
ومرتزقتهم المحتلين لأرض الكويت
who invaded the Kuwait
حكام الكويت مطايا للسعودية
because the Kuwaiti government
وزعوا شريط
are
We've been listening to an Iraqi news conference, which seems to be largely a name-calling of the Americans. The word gang, very popular, and the leader of the gang, President Bush, will continue to listen and see if they have any specific response to some of the things that have been going on. But we want to go to Kuwait now because NBC's Dana Lewis has been with the 101st Airborne. They are under another alert there. Dana, good morning to you. Tell us what's going on.
Hi, Chris. As you say, it's another alert. And this is now, I think, about the 7th in a 24-hour period. You know, it was pretty well all night here. This morning, we hadn't had one in some hours, and I was just talking to the colonel in charge of the brigade here, of the 2nd Brigade, and we were thinking that maybe because it had been hours since the last one, that maybe this was going to end. There was speculation on their part that as the 3rd Infantry, the 3rd ID, had moved into southern Iraq, that perhaps some of these launchers that don't have a very long range to them had started to press north and leave the southern part of Iraq. But here we are again. There's no confirmation that it was a missile launch yet. We'll have to wait, but it appears at this point that they are still able to fire missiles into Kuwait. And I can tell you that the 3 alarms before this one were all confirmed missile launches, full missile launches from Iraq. They weren't Scuds. Some of them were the Al Samud, and they landed in the desert here. The last one landed not very far from where I'm standing when it was intercepted by a Patriot anti-missile battery. So we're waiting to find out if this is yet another launch, and it's I suppose not depressing news, but it's not good news for commanders here, in the sense that they thought perhaps the Iraqis who were firing these would begin to move north and start to move those launchers out of southern Iraq, but it looks like they're still there.
Every time one of these alerts happens, Dana, how is that information gotten to the troops who are with you, and what's the standard operating procedure?
Well, in fact, there's a central command in Kuwait that is able to track these launches, and then they page out a message to the individual commanders at the different camps where there are many soldiers still getting ready to go into Iraq. I mean, there is a huge traffic jam, we're told, at the border today, and they are several hours behind moving forces across, because it's just this mind-boggling rush hour of military vehicles moving into Iraq right now. But after we get that page, they physically sound the alarm on this camp, and then we start moving. You get your mask on and you come out to the bunker here, and that's where we are now.
And when you and I talked, I don't know, it had to be 18 hours ago or so, and you probably were in your second or third alert, and you were talking about how the heart starts to pound and they go running into the bunkers, and the psychological impact of that. Now you had some downtime. It's started up again. What does that do to your head, basically?
Well, I mean, I think, you start to become relaxed about it, but when that alarm goes off, I think it increases your heart rate, that's for sure. You start looking to the sky, maybe this direction, because that's northeast to Iraq. And that's where they may possibly come from. And you can see still a lot of vehicles moving out there. I mean, not everybody can jump out of these vehicles as they're still moving convoys of equipment in here and suddenly jump into a bunker. I mean, they're moving on the roads. People are carrying out, this very large process of moving machines and men across the border right now. So they just can't stop this when the alarms go off. So people who can get to a bunker, they do.
Dana Lewis, we're going to continue to talk to you throughout the day, but he remains under alert. So does Bob Arnott, MSNBC's chief foreign correspondent, who is also in Kuwait. Bob, can you hear me? What's going on?
I was just actually in the prep room here for 268. That is the squad that lost that helo last night. It was a helo that we were actually the trap plane for. As I walked out, I heard 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I believe even 6 of the double sonic booms of the Patriot missiles. And for the first time, looked almost overhead and could see the actual puffs of smoke where the intercept occurred. So what happened in the last war, as I remember, was sort of triangulation. That is, they would go wide, they go short, they go long around Dhafran, and they finally sort of hit ground zero. Here they're ranging. I don't want to tell you where we are, but they're triangulating. The first one was 10 miles away. These are probably only a half a mile from our position where we saw the actual intercept. You can hear the air raid siren there in the background there, the short bursts warning people of potential chemical warfare. We have everyone here in their gas masks, full mop gear, in the bunkers, making their way into the bunkers. It hasn't quite become routine yet. What's tough, though, is that we launched last night under one of these attacks. So you have your full mop suit on, you have all of your gas masks on, and then you have to get into a helo, and you're very exposed. There are no bunkers out by the helos, and then you launch, and you go off into the night. As we prepared for our mission into Iraq last night, we were out in the desert, and again, warning after warning, and of course, no place to hide out there in the flat desert, putting your mop gear on. We then did leave from there. We had a whole series of Cobra gunships in probably the most brutal and successful part of the war so far, seizing the pipeline in southern Iraq, British commandos who we were transporting. We had 8 in our helo, just like the 8 in the helo that went down. We were the trap mission, which is the tactical recovery mission for that helo. We launched to try and recover, hoping that there were some survivors, but of course there were none. So it's very tough here. Standing around me are the men and women of the 268, which is the regiment that lost that helo. And of course our hearts and prayers go out to those individual crew members and to their families. Back to you.
All right, thanks very much. NBC's correspondents who are all throughout the field. Bob Arnott is one of them, as he just told you. They had heard some of the Patriots. Let's go now to Fred Francis, who is in northern Iraq. They have been getting a lot of reports there. And Fred, bring us up to date. The last time I think I heard reports out of northern Iraq, they were hearing of fighting in Kirkuk.
Not exactly fighting. Some of the cruise missiles, we heard about cruise missile reports overnight. Some of the cruise missiles, we believe, hit the Nebuchadnezzar Republican Guard Division headquarters to the southwest of Kirkuk. Key target, the only Republican Guard Division left in the north. Also, further north, Mosul, the second largest city in Iraq, an Arab city, about 100 miles, 80 miles from the Turkish border. Again, cruise missile strikes on, we believe, headquarter divisions or bomber strikes. We're not quite sure. Some before dawn, some just after dawn. So they're taking their time up here. No American troops save special forces who are poised to do the mission when called upon to go into those oil fields. The BBC reported this morning, British Broadcasting reported, that the Kirkuk oil fields had been taken by American forces. That is not correct. That is a prize target, but right now there has been no fighting that we know of in the last hour for those oil fields. This whole mission, Chris, is going really, believe it or not, according to plan. Move the tanks as fast as you can through the breaches up into Iraq, and don't show the full force and fury of American firepower, which we certainly haven't seen in the last 36 hours, until the tanks are close to Baghdad. And that's when it'll really open up. Big question, when will those tanks get close to Baghdad? Well, the way they're moving right now, within 2 or 3 days. Chris?
And let's talk about the defectors, because I know a little earlier, Fred, you were getting some word about that and talking about going according to plan. What have you been able to learn about these defections?
Well, about 30 hours ago, there were some defections about, I guess, an hour's drive from me, where an Iraqi officer tried to defect and was shot coming over the line by other Iraqis. There have been defections up and down the line in the north, and certainly a lot of defections in the south, and just prisoners of war taken in the south. My colleague Collar Shell of the Pentagon, the leaflets appear to be working. They are working. But keep in mind, the defections are not Republican Guard defections. 250,000 of the Iraqi army are regular army. Most of them probably will not fight. We'll find out how effective this campaign is as these tanks get close to Baghdad. And near Baghdad, there are 4 Republican Guard divisions, about 10,000 per division. So we're talking roughly 40,000 Republican Guard troops and tanks, somewhere near 800 tanks. As the American forces move close to Baghdad, that's when we'll find out whether the Iraqis are really going to fight or not, and that's when we'll know how quick this will be over.
Fred Francis in northern Iraq. Thank you, Fred. We'll be checking back with you. We want to go back to the 101st, where Dana Lewis is, because as we understand it, the all clear has now been sounded, and obviously, Dana, it has, because you have your gear off.
That's right. This was a short one, actually. I think it was about 5 minutes. Some of them have gone on for 30, 40 minutes, and the soldiers sit out here in the heat, and they sit in that bunker and they wait. But this one has been an all clear. Sergeant Dave Lemoyne is somebody who we actually bunk with, because we are, as you know, embedded with the troops. We stay in the tent with, I think there's about 18 of us in that tent. And Sergeant, you know, you've been riding this sort of roller coaster with us over the last 24 hours. We've had about 7 of these now. I mean, what's it like for you when the alarm sounds and you're up again? I mean, mentally, this has gone on and on.
You do the best you can. I've had 3 of them during the day and 4 at night, so it's not too bad at night because I work the night shift.
Actually, you're working at night, so you're
Correct.
up. But
I'm working the night shift. During the day, it gets a little rough because you're trying to get as many hours of sleep as you can to make it through the night, and then you don't know how many of these you'll have off, going off during the day. So
rattles everybody's nerves a bit.
Yeah, especially when you're in a dead sleep and have to jump up and pick up everything that you can and get it on and get over here to the bunker as fast as you can. It'll rattle you up, but you make do the best you can and just grab your gear and get over here as quickly as possible.
How's your family taking this when they see they're seeing some of this on television and seeing, maybe not recognizing you, but knowing you're a part of the masked bunch here in the bunker?
My family's doing well, actually. I've been able to speak with them. My wife is in Tennessee, and she's worried, I'm sure, as all family members back in the States are. But she has a lot of confidence in us. The rest of my family and her family are in Louisiana, and of course they have the same feelings, and they're just real anxious for us to get back home, get this over with and get home.
They're anxious for you to get home, and a lot of soldiers here that say that, Chris, they're anxious to get going. The sooner the 101st is mobilized across the border and get into their missions, they're not sitting ducks here, and that's what they're really hoping for. And as I mentioned before, Colonel Anderson, who runs the 2nd Brigade, was telling me this morning they were hoping that these alarms would end today, that as the mechanized infantry moved into Iraq, that some of these mobile launchers that are moving around in the south would start to scatter and push north. It looks for the moment like they have not. There must be a few more operating down there and still threatening American forces here in Kuwait who are waiting to cross the border. Back to you.
If you could stay there, Dana, I just want to tell people what we're seeing in the other half of the screen from where you are. Can we put that back up, because that's David Bloom, or as we've been calling it, the Bloommobile. Actually, if we can hear some audio, my guess is that he may be doing, is he doing a live shot for someone else? Oh, David, this is Chris Jansen. Can you hear me?
Chris, I can barely hear you, but my sound man, Bob Lapp, can relay the questions if I don't hear you.
Just go ahead and tell us what you've been up to since we last talked about an hour ago. Just moving.
Well, we're basically just rolling along, Chris. I mean, as I told you the last time, the convoy's basically hooked up. This is the train, if you will, of the 3rd Infantry Division. 20,000 soldiers, 6,000 or 7,000 vehicles, and they're just rolling north from, obviously, when we crossed into Iraq last night. But keep in mind, we crossed into Iraq with the very lead elements of this division. So what happened was we essentially, as they say, grabbed a foothold, and then we let the rest of the division catch up with us, and now we're all sort of spread out on these, they're not roads. I mean, if my photographer can pan ahead here, Craig White, you can take a look. I mean, all we're doing is rumbling along on a desert where there's so many tracks of vehicles that have gone in front of us that there's sort of a makeshift road, if you will. And it's important, as I mentioned before, to stay on that makeshift road because we're in an area where there was fighting in the first Persian Gulf War. Gulf 1, as some of the soldiers have taken to calling it, and they call this Gulf 2. At any rate, in Gulf 1, there's still unexploded ordnance here from U.S. airstrikes and other fighting that have gone on out here. For example, we've seen unexploded cluster bombs and other munitions. I mean, literally just a few feet away from us as we rumble along out here. So it's very important to sort of stick to this track and not veer off of the track.
David, in addition to the unexploded ordnances, what are the major concerns as you're on the move?
I think you're asking, Chris, what are the major concerns? And again, your questions are kind of being relayed to me. Well, I mean, the major concerns right now, once you get a big train of vehicles like this, is that you just keep the train moving. Because in a sense, you go at the rate of the slowest vehicles rather than the fastest vehicles. Obviously, the tanks and the Bradleys have the capability to whip out ahead of us. But in this case, that's not what they're doing. Instead, we're sort of all rumbling along together. And so you want to keep them fueled, and you do what they call hot refueling, where you just pause for a few minutes, quickly refuel, and keep going. They let the 2,500-gallon tankers catch up because they can go faster, and they have the 5,000-gallon tankers refuel them. As to the threat that they potentially face out here, keep in mind we're basically in the southern Iraqi desert where there had been 3 regular Iraqi army divisions arrayed. We were told early this morning from the military radio that at least one of those Iraqi divisions had surrendered. They never expected to face any sort of heavy opposition in the south of the country. Instead, there are essentially 2 rings enveloping Baghdad, one with the Republican Guard, which has more heavily armed. They have the equivalent, perhaps not the technical expertise nor the outstanding equipment that the U.S. military has, but they have tanks, they have what they call their own version of APCs, which carry their infantry. Those divisions are more encircling Baghdad, one to the south, one to the north, sort of ringing Baghdad, and then the Special Republican Guard has sort of collapsed in and around Baghdad to fight there. So those are the targets that they're really after, rather than anything that's here in the south.
And will this move toward the capital be virtually nonstop?
Well, I heard my producers trying to interrupt and tell me the question, but that one I could actually hear. Unclear is the answer, because obviously what they're trying to do is assess what's gone on with the strategic bombing campaign, this shock and awe, as they call it. So they have different plans based upon, for example, if the Iraqi regime was about to collapse or had indeed collapsed, they could make more of a beeline toward Baghdad, especially if some of those more heavily armored units were giving up, were surrendering. The commanders here carry with them what they call capitulation documents, which would allow the Iraqi commanders to sign on the dotted line. And we're told some Iraqi commanders have already done that, literally sign on the dotted line, and then that would allow them to keep their troops in garrison. I think that you may have seen the gun turret of Sergeant Joe Todd as he moved his gun around me here. He's one of the M88, if you will, soldiers here. There are two of them who are along here. We've got a gunner who's actually a tank commander, Sergeant Joe Todd, and we also have a driver up here whose name is Specialist or Private McLean. And the two of them are the ones who are driving us along as we rumble north with the rest of the U.S. Army's 3rd Infantry Division.
How old are these guys, David, and have they ever been in any sort of a situation like this before?
Private McLean is a 20-year-old from Brooklyn, New York, and he has not been in combat before. He enlisted in the military just within the last 2 years or so. Sergeant Todd is a Persian Gulf War veteran and one of the guys who the people in this unit really look up to. Earlier we were traveling with Sergeant Major Bob Gallagher, who together with the commander of this task force, Lieutenant Colonel Stephen Twitty, are the two leaders. And sometimes Sergeant Major Gallagher rides in this vehicle. In fact, if you saw us a couple hours ago, he was right where I am now. This vehicle allows them to move around right up close to the battlefield if we were to engage Iraqi forces, rather than in the past commanders having to stay back further on the battlefield. Instead, with this armored vehicle, they can move up close with the tanks, with the Bradleys, and offer some close-up guidance to their forces that are engaged in a fight.
I'm not even sure how, with all that sand, you can see. Are you eating a lot of sand today, David?
Am I eating a lot of sand? Yes. The sunglasses are not a fashion statement. It's very, very sandy out here, as you can tell. And basically, when I turn around like this, I mean, I just swallow up the dust. It's actually clear right now. This is the first time that I turned around, and it's actually much clearer right now than it has been. I mean, with these vehicles, obviously, when you're talking about thousands of vehicles out in the desert, they out of sand, and so we definitely have a diet of MREs and fine Iraqi sand sort of mixed together.
Delicious. In the meantime, it is amazing to talk to you. How does this work?
Well, suffice it to say it works. How about if we just leave it at that? I mean, basically what we've done is we've established the ability to transmit live from this vehicle using a pretty sophisticated camera, which can be outside the vehicle and take the bumps and the jars. And you may be getting a little bit of that. I frankly don't know how well the camera's working right now. Sometimes it works pretty well and sometimes it doesn't. But it took a lot of planning and a lot of effort on the part of a lot of people. But obviously in the end, I think we benefit from it, and I hope that our viewers benefit from it, because it certainly is an unprecedented view of American ground troops as they prepare to engage in battle.
Extraordinary. And since it seems you're able to hear me, David, I should just say that this is by far the best transmission that we've had. You haven't been breaking up at all. We've been hearing you and seeing you very clearly, which is why we'd like to stay with it until we may lose it again, as we did the last time. You know, I was talking to your producer, Paul, just a little while ago, and we were talking about the extraordinary logistics being out in the desert and able to do what these troops are able to do. Talk a little about that, David, the logistics.
Well, I mean, you're absolutely right, because in World War II, Rommel said, and this is a paraphrase, but Rommel, the great Panzer tank commander for the Germans, said that the war is decided before the first shot is fired by the quartermaster, meaning the people who supply the food, and especially for this unit, the fuel and the water and the mechanics, like Private McLean over here, they're the ones who make an army go. I mean, we tend to focus on the tanks and the Bradleys because obviously they're the ones that are actually engaged in battle. And as a matter of fact, when we get closer to those operations, you'll see a lot more of the Apache and the Longbow helicopters and the A-10s, the Warthogs, which fly close air supports on these ground missions. But the fact of the matter is, none of those things work without thousands of people, both here with us in this long train that is the 3rd Infantry Division, but also back in Kuwait, back in Qatar, back at air bases all over the Middle East, on aircraft carriers and other ships out in the Persian Gulf. A lot of those people that you don't see are the ones that give this effort the possibility to make tracks toward Baghdad as they are right now.
As we're watching you and knowing that we're able to establish this very sophisticated communication, Dana Lewis was saying at his location about one of the sergeants talking to his wife. Is there any communication between the troops there with their families back home? Do they have any way to talk to their families?
Right now they don't, because the situation, Chris, is that because this force was the lead element. I mean, they literally were the first boots in Baghdad, excuse me, the first boots in Iraq as far as a major armed contingent by the United States. Clearly there'd been special forces operating, clearly there'd been CIA agents operated, clearly there'd been maneuvers in the northern part of Iraq, which is Kurdish controlled. But as far as an army division, and the 3rd Infantry Division is the only army division that's here now in southern Iraq, before in Kuwait. As a result, they were on, I think it was Sunday, if I'm not mistaken, ordered to have no more emails, no more telephone calls, nothing whatsoever, because these soldiers obviously knew what the war plan was, and no one would intentionally convey that information. But as they say, loose lips sink ships, and they just wanted to make sure that nothing on the order of the battle plan was able to leak out.
And if nothing in the battle plan changes and these troops you're traveling with do put boots into Baghdad, they are going to need to be at their optimum. How are they trying to make sure that that happens in terms of food, in terms of sleep, in terms of keeping up the morale?
I wish I could find Sergeant Todd. Can you hand me one of those MREs? The MREs? Basically what we're eating are things like this. This is the chicken breast strips with chunky salsa, courtesy of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And basically what you do is you open these things up and they contain a heating unit, which is actually this flameless heater right here. And what you do is you pop it inside this, pour a tiny little bit of water in, and that's how you stay nourished. As far as sleep, we had the advantage because we were the first unit to cross into Iraq, and we're with the 315 Infantry of the 2nd Brigade, which is the Spartan Brigade of the 3rd Infantry Division, and they were the first Army soldiers to move en masse into Iraq. But because what they did was establish a foothold and wait for the rest of the division to come along to join up with them so we could now have this train, we had a chance to get a few hours sleep. I have to tell you that sleeping in an M88 is not your luxury hotel by any means. It's little cramped quarters, but beggars can't be choosers, and we did catch a few hours of sleep. But what they do in a vehicle like this is, I mean, in this situation with just the two of them, with just Private McLean and Sergeant Todd, one's driving and one's manning the gun, and they're only sleeping when they stop. Otherwise, you're just going on adrenaline. But what Sergeant Todd does is he keeps a lookout. I mean, he's basically kind of scanning the sky and sweeping his gun around, looking for any opposition forces. Again, the only opposition that we've encountered was at the very first part of this mission when they hit the Iraqi observation posts. Their mission was to hit 2 Iraqi observation posts with between 10 to 30 Iraqi soldiers apiece. And I know I've said this before, but for people who haven't heard this, I mean, basically what they had to do was wipe out those observation posts because they didn't want word to get back to Baghdad as to the routes that this huge division was taking into Iraq, because obviously that's strategic information, which is why all we've been saying all along is we're in southern Iraq. We're not saying where we are. We're not saying how far we've traveled, because that information is obviously secure and not something that these commanders want to give out. But basically what they do is Private McLean drives us along, and you know, we move along in this vehicle and we try to keep up with the train that's in front of us. And obviously these vehicles move at different speeds, so sometimes you catch up a little bit, sometimes you fall behind a little bit. But if we drive for a couple days, you'll be driving for a couple days, and that's just what soldiers have to do in these circumstances.
Initially, when we established the picture, David, we did see along the route some abandoned tanks from the first Persian Gulf War. How much of that have you seen, and what else, if anything, have you seen besides desert?
I think what you're asking me about, Chris, is the Iraqi tanks that we saw out in the desert. And what that was this area was part of the area that was fought over when the this division in the first Gulf War, Gulf One as they say, was called the 24th Infantry Division. It's now the 3rd Infantry Division, but they were the ones who participated in the big left hook to sweep around and envelop the Iraqi forces and try to make a pincer move and trap them in. So this same area that we're traveling in right now was where there was combat, both in terms of aerial combat and in terms of ground combat. So that's a long way of answering your question. What we've seen are the T-72 Iraqi tanks and other Iraqi tanks. Most of the T-72s, which are the Soviet-made, most sophisticated tanks that the Iraqis had, were actually pulled back further into Iraq so that Saddam Hussein kept as many of those tanks as he could. The tanks with the lesser capabilities were actually the ones that were destroyed out in the desert for the most part, and those are the ones that we've seen. They're not littering the desert, if you will, but we see them from time to time. The biggest concern, as I mentioned before, is the unexploded munitions, because we literally have gone by cluster bombs that have just been a few feet away from our tracks. That's why I said before that it's very important that they stay on the road. It's not really a road, as you can see. I said before, it's just basically a gravel dirt path that they're traveling on. But you can see that this is a lot more hardened, and off to the sides, it's a lot more sand that's loose sand, where we've seen the unexploded munitions that they have to be very careful about.
This has been a pretty straight journey so far, but if and when you encounter Iraqis, David, what do you do? What does Paul, your producer, do? What does your cameraman do?
You know, if I could ask Paul Nasser to relay that question, because I didn't hear you, Chris. Paul? Well, okay, I heard your question now, Chris, and thank you, Bob Lapp, my sound man, for relaying that to me. We haven't encountered any Iraqi soldiers yet. I mean, we haven't personally. The infantry platoons did give chase to a couple of Iraqi soldiers who were trying to get away or engage them at those observation posts, and they took them out, if you will, in military parlance. But what they would like to do is have those soldiers surrender. As I've mentioned before, these soldiers are carrying with them what they call capitulation documents, which would basically allow the Iraqi commanders to sign on the dotted line and say, we're not going to engage the U.S. forces, we're going to surrender instead, and we're going to put our men back in their garrison without their weapons. We're going to put our military vehicles in a square with the gun turrets pointing inside so that they could not engage the American forces, and we're not going to fight you. That's what they would prefer to have happen, and that's what they believe is already happening with some of the regular army divisions in the southern part of Iraq, who, keep in mind, those were the conscripts, not well paid, not well fed, not trained. well taken care of, who they did not expect to engage in any sort of vicious resistance. Now, having said that, concerns.
Well, for the first time after an extraordinary 20 or 25 minutes of watching David Bloom on the move in the Iraqi desert, we have lost the signal, but he has been with the 3rd Infantry Division. It is known as Iron Fist. We're talking about a huge number, 250 tanks, 7,000 vehicles. They were among the first on the move, crossing into Iraqi territory last night. What he is riding on is called a tank recovery vehicle. And you saw, as we have seen with our correspondents throughout, he has a 20-year-old who has never seen combat before. This is his first mission and getting a taste of what it's really like there in the Iraqi desert. And he also has with him a veteran of the Persian Gulf War. The one thing that they have encountered, at least immediately with David along the way, in fact, are a number of abandoned vehicles, abandoned tanks from the first Persian Gulf War. They were given specific orders to rest last night because it could be a very long several days, probably at least 2 or 3 days, as they move across the Iraqi desert. Their exact location, of course, not known, and heading, it is believed, if the war plan goes as expected, heading into Baghdad. They have tremendous logistical problems that are ahead of them, but so far they have been handling them very, very well. Now let's just get you caught up at 49 after the hour. Some of the things that have been happening so far today. There was the crash of one military helicopter. There were 4 Americans and 8 British crew members on board. Again, that is an update from the British military in Doha, Qatar. That number revised downward. 12 members of the troops who were on that, all of them lost today. A recovery effort underway. We are hoping that a little later on in Doha, Qatar, at CENTCOM, at Central Command, we will be getting a briefing. It was originally scheduled for 7:30 Eastern Time, a little more than an hour and a half from now, but they are looking at various reasons. They're looking at exactly what kind of information they have, how they want to present it, what they can and cannot present. So it may or may not happen around that time, but we are expecting an update from CENTCOM a little later today. In the meantime, they continue to watch the situation, the humanitarian situation, as refugees have been leaving Iraq and heading into Jordan. NBC's Mike Taibbi has spent several days now at a refugee camp, which is in Jordan, off of the Iraqi border. Mike, what's happening there?
Hi, Chris. How are you? You know, it was fascinating listening to David's report, and he used the word capitulation, referring to the Iraqi troops. Iraqi troops have also capitulated in the sense that they haven't done what it was feared they would do, to send Scuds from the Western Desert over where we're standing right now in Jordan, just over the border into Israel. That was a fear that has not happened. There's also been a fear about a flood of refugees. There hasn't been a flood of refugees yet, but there have been hundreds of them. Look behind me, I'll tell you what we're seeing. This is Camp B, Camp Bravo, for non-Iraqis living in Iraq, leaving the country. You can see the buses that now have about 200 or 300 Sudanese refugees. They've been sitting in those buses for hours now, waiting for the ride to Amman to take a flight to Khartoum and finally to get home. In front of us, you can see this larger structure. That's going to be the hospital in this camp. And to the right of that, I'll swing around and let Tony get the shot. There's a small communication center here where the refugees, before they get on those buses, are given 1 minute to call their relatives or anybody else they want to contact back home to make arrangements to collect them once they get there. And beyond that, the tents themselves, which until a couple of hours ago were teeming with these families who'd spent a very, very cold night there. And it wasn't a major problem for them. There were a couple of medical problems, 1 heart attack for an older man, 3 other younger children suffering respiratory distress because of the winds that constantly drive the dust in the air. And then to the right of that, a washing up area with sinks, cold water, of course, and a row of latrines. Now, as I said, when we got here this morning at about 7 o'clock local time, it seemed as though everything was under reasonable control, and the people running this camp said that in fact it was. Children were playing soccer in the courtyard in and among the tents, and they were getting ready to board the buses. But that was a long time ago, 6 hours, that they thought they were going to be leaving fairly early, and they're still sitting on those buses. I got a chance to speak with one of the representatives from the International Red Cross, Sebastian Carlier.
The things are looking better now. It's still very cold, about maybe 5 degrees, so people are not really used to that kind of temperature here, but things are okay now.
From the time, on average, from the time that they left Baghdad, got on that bus, until the time they were situated in a shelter here, you say it was at least a 12-hour drive. How long in total was it that they had to spend before they could finally sit down and be situated here?
But according to some of them, I mean, for instance, I talked to somebody like a couple of minutes ago. He said that they left Baghdad yesterday at 12 o'clock, at noon. So, and they came today at 7 o'clock. So this trip was really long. But some other people said yesterday that it took them like 12 or 15 hours.
It's not tragedy, but it certainly is trauma, a traumatic decision that these people have to make to leave their lives, that are settled lives in Iraq, to come to this place, to finally be sent home to sometimes very unsettled situations back home. For example, in the Sudan, where there is a civil disturbance, a civil conflict going on there as well. I should tell you that we also looked at the other camp, Camp A, which is dedicated to Iraqi refugees. We looked there several times yesterday and early this morning as well. There are no Iraqi refugees who've been settled in, not that we could see. It's expected, though, that flood could begin if the bombing resumes, as one assumes that it will, with any intensity, that the border crossing just a few miles from here will be teeming with people. We'll go up there and check that as well. So that's the situation from this camp, Chris.
You talk about the emotional upheaval, obviously, people deciding to leave their homes, but physically everybody seems to be arriving okay, and there hasn't been really a need for a hospital yet. We saw the one that was being built.
You know, they are in reasonably good shape, and there was a fear about that too, because back in the first Gulf War, the refugees who streamed across, more than 1 million of them across all of Iraq's borders, were fairly fit. They were working people, Iraqis who were afraid, and they just left, as refugees will. In this case, don't forget, there's been 12 years of sanctions, and the fear was that the refugee population would by definition be a more fragile population, and that they would arrive here in poorer shape, physically and psychologically and in other ways. We haven't seen that yet because we haven't seen the numbers yet, but the fear has not gone away that that's in fact what's going to happen. And we talked to a couple of people about how difficult it is to make the decision. We're going to look more closely at that in a later report. We talked to one man whose name was Motasem Mohammed. He's had a restaurant, as he puts it, a thriving, popular restaurant.
Want a compact utility tractor that does almost anything? Small farmers, landscapers, general contractors, and nurserymen can appreciate Baggett & Baggett Tractors Land Track and Farm Track series from Long Agribusiness. Land Track and Farm Track models range from 30 to 70 engine horsepower and use attachments from post hole diggers to front end loaders. Quality built, excellent fit and finish, a Farm Track can outperform any red, blue, or green tractor in its class, and for thousands of dollars less. You know it's just good common sense to buy a Farm Track. Available now at Baggett & Baggett Tractor in Springfield.
Make your car a safe machine. Visit one of Middle Tennessee's 16 Firestone Master Care Car Service Centers. We're your home for tires and service. Top quality, done right the first time with a money-back guarantee. And nobody sells for less. Nobody. Right now, take advantage of our special purchase deal on steel-belted radials, 4 for just $79. Now at your Bridgestone Firestone Service Center. Our mission is to provide the ultimate in customer satisfaction. And that's not just a phrase. It's a commitment. Visit one of the Firestone Master Care Car Service Centers near you.
You're watching